Let's go ahead then and bring this proceeding to order. This is the Fort Myers Beach Special Magistrate hearing for June 3rd, 2025. We're getting underway by Zoom teleconference as scheduled. My name is John Van Lanningham, and I am the Fort Myers Beach Special Magistrate for code compliance. I'll be conducting today's hearings. I have before me the minutes of the hearings from last month's meeting on May 16th, 2025, which I've reviewed and seem to be in order. Are there any objections to approval of those minutes?
No, Your Honor.
Yes.
No, Your Honor. We're fine with them.
Uh, All right. Without objection, then I will approve the minutes from the May 16th, 2025 meeting. Are there any other preliminary matters or administrative items we need to attend to before we start calling the hearings?
No, Your Honor. Today you have, let's see, 4 items, and we'll just take them as they come.
All right.
Nothing to add extra.
We can go ahead then and proceed with the first case.
Thank you, Your Honor. The first case on today's agenda is 134-138 Connecticut Street, owned by First Baptist Church of Fort Myers. This is FMB case number 2024-0186. The property owner is First Baptist Church of Fort M. The property address again is 134-138 Connecticut Street. The violation is for a non-compliant structure. And as you are aware, Your Honor, we have had a number of violations come before you regarding these non-compliant structures. In your packet, we have Exhibit A, and this is a letter from the Federal Emergency Management Agency that was dated back in July 19th of 2024. This was to Andy Hyatt as the town manager. And the letter contains a summary of some findings that were made regarding the town's compliance with the minimum floodplain standards that are in our code. Specific to this case is there is a reference on page 3, paren 2B, which requires the town to provide a plan for remedying identified violations. And then also attached to that is a Town of Fort Myers Beach post-disaster compliance status update report from FEMA that identifies these compliance issues. Page 2 of that report says failure in the permitting system, which allowed the use of temporary non-compliant structures, including shipping containers and trailers, food trucks. The statement is followed by a list of the Town of Fort Myers Beach citations further down on the page. The report states that these non-compliant structures and temporary have been placed in the coastal high hazard area, the VE zone and the coastal A zone. And FEMA had asked us for a plan of bringing these non-compliant structures into compliance. Your Honor is aware of the various documents that we have in Exhibit B of the packet. They're basically the same that we have presented to you in other cases. Moving right along, the town had issued some temporary placement permits, and since that time, at the request of FEMA and as part of our ability to try to come back into compliance, any of those pending permits have been revoked. And FEMA, of course, said that we can't issue any more of them. That was back in December. There is subsequent correspondence with FEMA. I'm going to fast forward a little bit for purposes of efficiency to state that our last correspondence with FEMA, after working with them and trying to come into compliance, was on April the 28th of this year, at which point FEMA, which had initially placed us on probation, indicated that the town would be eligible to go back into the program. However, it would still be FEMA would still be monitoring the town, making sure that we did comply with our floodplain regulations, and they would be doing various inspections to that effect. That brings us to the case before you, which Officer Yazzo will further elaborate on the actual details of it. However, we believe that there is a non-compliant structure there, and the purpose of today's hearing is to go ahead and try to bring that property into compliance. I also, through the testimony, we want to introduce our new floodplain manager. This is Miss Di Federicis. Nice Italian name there. Sorry if I mispronounced it. And she'll be providing testimony to you as well, and perhaps we should go ahead and swear in. Also, I want to recognize Pastor Sean, who is here representing the property owner, who I believe will also be providing testimony and would need to be sworn in.
All right. Very good. And who would you like to start with?
If we could swear in our witnesses, and then Officer Yazzo will get us started.
All right, let me go ahead and swear in then all the witnesses at once. If you would, all those who expect to give testimony in this hearing, please raise your right hands for me. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you'll give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Yes, I do.
All right, very good.
Good morning, Your Honor. Nice to see
Good
you
morning.
again. My name is Thomas Yazzo. I am the Emergency Services Director for Fort Myers Beach. As the Director of the Compliance and Emergency Services Department, I am responsible for the day-to-day operation of the Town of Fort Myers Beach Code Enforcement Department. I now supervise 3 code compliance officers. I review all the code enforcement cases with them and have access to all the available code enforcement files. In addition, since July 2024, I've also personally been involved with the town's efforts to come into compliance with floodplain regulations identified by FEMA, which are incorporated in the town's code of ordinances. I've been sworn in and will provide testimony and documentation regarding the violation in this case. During my testimony, I will periodically refer to the exhibits and the agenda materials and request that these materials be admitted into evidence and included as part of the record of this case. Again, this is Fort Myers Beach Code Enforcement Case number 2024-1086. The subject property is located at 138 Connecticut Street, Fort Myers Beach, 33931. On October 28, 2024, I observed a non-compliant structure on the subject property, which I determined to be non-compliant structure based on the current floodplain regulations, inclusive of design codes required in the special hazard areas, as defined in Section 6-494 of the FMB Code of Ordinances. The subject property is located in a coastal AE zone, as identified on the latest floodplain map, and requires structures to have a base flood elevation, bottom space, at 12 feet above sea level. I observed that the non-compliant structures were not elevated, and to the best of my knowledge, did not have an engineered plans for pilings or infrastructure. I then consulted at the time with the floodplain manager, Carl Thomas, who was on staff, who confirmed me that the non-compliant structures on the subject property was a non-compliant structure based on my observation and a violation of Section 6-501 and 6-525 of the Town Code of Ordinances and the American Society of Civil Engineers, ASCE 24-14, which is incorporated by reference into the town codes. My review and in consultation with Mr. Thomas is consistent with FEMA's determination contained in their letters of July 19, 2024 and November 12, 2024. I prepared a notice of violation and searched Lee County's property appraiser's database records containing property owner information and further verified that the property owner is First Baptist Church of Fort Myers Beach based on a deed found in the official records of Lee County, Florida. I issued the notice of violation on November 13th and sent a copy of it by certified mail receipt to the address of record, specifically to 130 Connecticut Street, FMB, Florida 33931, and posted a copy of notice of violation at the subject property and at the town hall located at this time at 2731 Oak Street, Fort Myers Beach, Florida 33931. A copy of notice of violation, affidavit of posting, notice and posting, and evidence of ownership is labeled in Exhibit C. Notice of and information about the case is also displayed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the Town of Fort Myers Beach website under public notices. The respondent is present today at this hearing. He identified himself as Sean Kritzter. He's the pastor of said church, sir. I took photographs to document the violation, and posting I observed on October 28, 2024, in Exhibit C contains true and accurate unaltered copies of these photographs during my inspection and posting on April 29th of 2025. The photographs show the non-compliant structure located in the coastal AE zone is not elevated to 12 feet above base flood level. In my notice of violation, I gave First Baptist Church of Fort Myers Beach 30 days from November 13th, 2024, to remove the non-compliant structures from the property and or to otherwise come into compliance with the town codes. To be fair, Your Honor, they had a shipping container on property, which they have since removed, but the other structures that are still on property are still non-compliant structures. I re-inspected the subject property on April 15th, and the shipping container and non-compliant structure remain on subject property in the same condition as I previously observed. I then prepared an affidavit of non-compliance with attached photographs, a copy of which is included in hearing exhibit D in the agenda materials. The property owner did receive a letter revoking and rescinding any possibility of a temporary use permit on December 19th, 2024, a copy of which is included in hearing exhibit B in the agenda materials. As a result of the property owner's failure to remove all the non-compliant structures at the subject property into compliance with section 6-501, and to bring the subject property in compliance with section 6-501 and 6-525 of the town's land development code, as identified in the notice of violation, the property owner was provided with a notice of today's code enforcement hearing with affidavit of notice and posting as shown in hearing exhibit A. In advance of today's hearing, I re-inspected the property yesterday, June 2nd, 2025, and took photographs of the non-compliant structures and created an affidavit of non-compliance, which remains on these structures still remain on the subject property in the same condition as I initially observed on October 28th, 2024. I would like to add these photographs to the record and add them into hearing exhibit C, please.
All right.
At this time, Your Honor,
What you sent yesterday? You have the photographs?
I do, and everything was sent through already.
Okay.
Everything was already sent through that part.
Remind him.
Yes, Your Honor, that should be in your agenda packet from yesterday.
All right. I'm pulling that up. Go ahead.
Okay. So at this time, Your Honor, I'd like to ask floodplain manager Kelly D. Federicis to provide you with additional information regarding the town's code section and ASCE 24-14 and what is needed for a non-compliant structure to obtain compliance within the town code. Thank you, sir. Any questions?
I do not have any questions. Let me ask if I'm going to get your name wrong. Pastor Sean, can I get your last name?
Kritzer.
Yeah, stand to the mic.
It's Kritzer, Critser.
Critser?
Yes,
Kritzer?
yes.
Did you have any questions for the witness, Pastor Krister?
Oh, no, sir, not yet.
No, all right.
I mean, I have a floodplain question, but she may be getting ready to clear it up, so that's good.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Officer Yazzo, and why don't we have the next witness?
Hey there, good morning. Kelly DeFedericis, the Town of Fort Myers Beach floodplain manager. They wanted me to give you a little update with my history. So, I've been with the town since January of this year. Prior to the
Let me jump in here real quick, if I could. Can I get you to spell your last name, or I'll
Yes.
never be able to say it?
it's DE, F as in Frank, ED, ERICIS as in Sam.
De Federicis.
Yes,
De
and-
Federicis.
Kelly is spelled Kelli.
All right. Oh. Glad you pointed that out. All right, now I've got it. Go ahead.
Yes, sorry. Like I was saying, I started here with the beach in January of 2025. Carl is still on staff. It's just I'm local here now. And prior to starting with the beach, I was the floodplain manager for the city of Marco Island for the last 9 years. So I'm very familiar with the coastal requirements and any floodplain that goes on here in Southwest Florida. And I'm here to just follow up to what Mr. Yazo had specified. With regard to this structure, to make it compliant, as of right now, I do not see that we have an elevation certificate on record to determine what the finished floor elevation of the structure is. Without this elevation certificate, we cannot determine how much higher it needs to go to make it compliant. On trailers like this, they go from the underside because there's HVAC equipment and stuff under the trailer. So the underside must be to finished floor elevation of 12 because it is located in a base flood elevation of 11 and you're required to be 1 foot above. So if we can get an elevation certificate for this structure, and this is only from a floodplain standpoint, it is not what is required for building code purposes, but from a floodplain standpoint, we would need that elevation certificate to determine how much higher the actual structure would need to be to determine for compliance, if that makes sense.
Yeah, could you say that last piece again, make sure I understand that?
Yeah, so right now, this property is located in a base flood elevation of 11. It is required to be 1 foot above base flood, so that would make the underside of the trailer at 12. And so right now, we don't have an elevation certificate to determine what the finished floor currently is at. Once we have that elevation certificate, we can determine if it needs to go up 1 foot, 2 foot, 3 feet, but that's the only document that can be used to determine how many feet it can go up, how many feet it needs to go up.
So the respondent needs to get an engineer to do that elevation certificate?
It's actually prepared by a surveyor.
Okay.
Yeah, and then, like I said, that's the only document that we can use to provide its assistance to determine how many feet it needs to go up. I mean, it could possibly only need to go up 1 foot. We don't know without that document.
All right. Anything else?
From a floodplain standpoint, that's all.
All right, and Pastor Kritzer, did you have any questions for the floodplain manager here, Ms. DeFedericis?
Just one, is the entire island under the same floodplain, or does it divide? I was told in years past that our property sat on the border of one of the zones, and half the property was on one side and half the property was on the other.
Okay, so I do actually have the map pulled up and I can show you, but this property is located in a base flood elevation of 11. There are several lines that run through adjacent properties, but from what I saw, it's fully in a base flood elevation of 11. And these maps were adopted in 2022.
So on the original large property piece, is it one,
So,
or was that property divided?
currently-
Because we're on 2 parcels.
Yeah, it's where the structure is located. So if that,
Corner, okay.
yeah, so I looked at that prior to the meeting, and because that's located in a base flood elevation of 11, you must go to 12.
Perfect.
So the closer you get to the coast, the higher it
Sure,
goes.
understood.
And so, yeah, that's actually better because it's not in the A12.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, that was my only question, Your Honor.
All right.
Anything else?
All right, I don't have any questions, I appreciate your testimony. Anything else that the town would like to ask the witness?
No, not of this witness, Your Honor. So, we believe that we have provided the requisite evidence to show that there has been and continues to exist a violation on this property. And we would be asking for an order to that effect. Also the authorization, to remove the non-compliant structure in the event that the property owner fails to do so based on a compliance date that we would defer to your judgment to establish. And also asking for the $250 administrative fee.
All right, very good, and Pastor Kritzer, why don't you take the podium there? Let me ask you first, and then if you want to give testimony or have any other witnesses or exhibits, we'll certainly take that as well. Preliminarily, are you all contesting the violation that's been charged here?
First of all, where's the camera that I'm looking at him at? Because feels weird to look at the TV.
Here.
Okay, there you are.
You're looking at me now.
Okay. We're not really contesting the violation, so to speak. We do have questions and concerns over the process in which this is taken, and at the financial burden that we're now placed under. Of course, we would approach this two ways. One, we'd surely like to stay. We're in the process of, the building of the new building. We believe a church should be on the island, or our church should be on the island specifically. The church is used for congregating and for assembly, and then a food pantry daily. That's pretty much the only, usage of the building. We did make it through 2 hurricane floods last year. The building is secured just like the building that we're standing in now is. So I'm saying, of course, that would be our first choice. Now, I've watched many of these hearings, and I think we all who are in these structures believe the same way, and we don't seem to be able to allow that, and I get that. So then we would go to, our second choice, which would be, that's fine, we need to remove it. I think the town is culpable in that, that we now need to remove it because, I'm looking at a timeline that started, as the town says, back in July of 19th. I didn't even receive my permit until August 31st of 2024. That's when I received my official notice that I could, move into the structure. I didn't even get my fire inspection passed until September 11th because they said that we could go ahead and start assembly as long as that last fire inspection happened. And then it did, and we received it on September 11th. I then found out that there was an actual letter that came to the town on April 8th of 2024 when FEMA started stating that there was a problem. So the town allowed me to go through this permitting process without even mentioning that there possibly could be a problem and giving me the option to say, do you want to proceed, knowing that it's possible that we could be in trouble. So I understand that there was a failure, according to the notice I got, that there was a failure in the permitting on the town's on their part. So in our mind, we went through, I got the bills here, about $121,000 worth of finances to put this structure in place because we were told we could. Now we're saying that was an error. If that's an error, then I think someone should at least share in the responsibility of that. So if we need to remove it, let's remove it. If that's the final determination of Your Honor, we stand behind that. We're not here to fight and try to stay when it shouldn't. We're just saying we didn't have the finances. We went and borrowed it, begged, borrowed, and steal to get it, to put that structure in place. And then now we're telling, hey, we made a mistake. You can't do that. It needs to go away. And then finding out that there was actual information given to the town that they knew that they were possibly had a problem and still allowed us to go forward and spend that money. We just think that was irresponsible. And we have shouldered the entire burden. Now we're being told, well, we hope you can get it moved or we'll move it for you. So we're saying, we'd like for you to move it for us. We'd like for you to absorb the finances of moving it, and maybe even pay us for doing it in the first place. So sure, we'd ask for the whole $121,000 back. I don't think we're going to get it, but if Your Honor could see fit to give us part of it back to help at least get them out of here and recoup some of that money, we'd be greatly appreciated.
Let me ask a couple questions just to clarify. The permitting you're talking about, that's for a permanent structure or for a temporary structure?
That is for this temporary structure specifically. These.
Okay.
So we're sitting in a triple wide trailer that was a FEMA, not FEMA, I'm sorry, was an FPL training center. We purchased it from Will Scott Industries, and they moved it, placed it, on on our property, for this specific purpose.
And just in terms of the chronology of events, you had a permanent structure there that was damaged in the hurricane?
Yes, sir. We had 5 buildings on the property, and they're all destroyed.
Okay. And so the temporary trailer, the triple wide, that came in as your substitute or your temporary placement while you look at constructing a permanent building?
Yes, sir.
And your long-term plan is to build a permanent building?
Yes, sir. Our LDO is in process now. Permits have been through town staff, or at least discussions on the permits have been through town staff, and final drawings have been submitted. So we're well into the process and hope to be breaking ground in the next probably 60 to 90 days.
Okay. All right. So the permitting that you spent the $121,000 on, that was the temporary placement permit?
It's the permit and the structures themselves. Like I said,
Right.
we went to Will Scott to purchase those, and then had to get them placed, had to get them transported, tied down, the whole process.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to make sure I understood what was happening there. In terms of, I know you've spoken about responsibility and recouping expenses and, um, um, just, so you understand, as special magistrate, I don't have the authority to make awards like that. Um, I won't comment one way or the other as to whether or not, there's any redress for that, but whatever it might be, if it might be, it's not here in front of me as special magistrate. I just don't have that authority. My authority is limited to determining the violations. If there are other things that have happened, whatever they may be, I don't have the jurisdiction to address them. So I'm not ignoring you or dismissing it. I'm just telling you the limits of what I can do don't extend to into that space,
Okay.
if that
But
makes
then
sense.
at the very least, we would ask not to be charged to court costs.
All right, and let me ask if there are any questions by the town for this witness. If you were done, did you have anything else you wanted to say, or any other
No.
exhibits?
No, Your Honor. I'm good.
Oh, okay. Any questions for the pastor?
Yes, and Pastor, we do recognize the work that you do on the island for the residents, and we do appreciate that. Unfortunately, we find ourselves in a situation with FEMA. Has anyone discussed with you the possibility of raising the structure rather than just outright removal? Because that was what we were considering as far as bringing you into compliance.
Sure. I mean, if we're looking, I know that we're sitting at 43 inches, so we're sitting just under 4 feet right now.
Do we know what the ground is?
So hold on,
That's what I'm
hold on a
saying.
second. So, Your Honor, if I may, let me just bring our town staff, who can have a better dialogue with you as to the specifics of it.
Sure. That's fine.
Compliance is really our goal, but
Understood.
we don't really want to, be punitive. We wanna bring these structures into compliance.
Sure.
So, Pastor, the goal again is compliance. So,
Right.
with that being said, removing the structures is one option, okay? And then the other option is to bring it into compliance by raising it to the base flood level at 12 feet. Because it's 11 feet in the area where you are, well, it has to be 1 foot above that, and because of the structure is what it is, it has to be at the bottom floor level, okay, underneath. Okay, so just to be very clear, and I wanna make sure that you understand, it wasn't just to remove it, it was to raise it up and make it compliant.
Okay.
And I can defer to our floodplain manager. She can give you better information on how to make that happen and exactly what you need to do. Okay?
It was just, the reason it was brought that, the reason I brought that way is our code violation doesn't state, let's talk about raising it up. To be honest,
It just says bring it in compliance.
correct, and, I've sent emails back in November, still haven't been answered by staff, council, I included everyone. I left a voicemail with a zoning lady who, in conversation with our developer, stated that we were, in non-compliance and she wasn't willing to move forward. So I left her voicemail, on March 11th of this year. She still hasn't called me back. So we reached out to try to see if there were other options, we just haven't heard anything. So to answer your question real quick, I know that we are at the property itself, right there is at 3.8, and then we're at 43 inches. So we're still looking at around 6 feet to have to go up. And I don't think Your Honor has the option to say this, but if the town is okay with paying to have it raised up, that helps, go back to the responsibility of saying, because Kendra did sign off on the floodplain, she looked at what levels we were at that point. Kendra, Your Honor, is at that time was the person in charge of issuing the permit. We were required to show her what our base flood level was at that point, show her how tall the structures were gonna be, and she agreed that the 43 inches was okay at that time. So if that's the case, and now we're saying it needs to be a little taller than that, if we only need to go up another 6 feet, that's, 8 blocks, 8 concrete blocks, on each pier. That structure's sitting on, I think, 48 piers plus the tie downs. They would simply have to raise the structure up, stick the other piers under it, and let's go. And the church would be fully acceptable to that if the town were to say, hey, we messed up, we'll help you, and then you can stay. If that's in the best interest of the town, I'm still, torn beside, You know, is that, do we still want the structures to sit there? Is that gonna still be okay? Because, you know, my point was, I didn't think we could even have trailers on the island. You know, temporary trailers, they're still not gonna be, it's not a structure like the houses across the street that have been put on piers. I mean, they're still a trailer. So if we're saying that the trailer can stay, it just has to be raised up a little bit, that doesn't really make sense to me. You know, that I can bring a mobile home on this island and strap it down and still be able to live in it just as long as it's 12 feet in the air. It just doesn't seem like it's a hurricane-proof house. That's it.
So, what I would recommend is obtaining an elevation certificate to get exact numbers, to see exactly what it needs to be elevated to. But while, I don't know how much in depth I'm supposed to go into this, but I'll meet with you so we can better go over, what your options are once you have that elevation certificate. And then determine, from there what you would like to do, but I can absolutely work with you on this to get it.
I mean, the town has a current elevation certificate that was done in the last 60 days
Okay, so
because of the LDO.
then that's
So
what I
it-
need to know, because if
Sure.
I'm not on that LDO, then I wouldn't know that one exists.
Okay.
And so I can go ahead and look that up and I can correspond with you.
Sure.
We can get exact numbers.
Okay.
When you say, and just, again, so I can kind of picture this, 12 feet elevation, that's above sea level? Or
No.
or the base flood, it's not above the ground necessarily, or is it?
Yeah, so what it is when FEMA develops their flood insurance rate maps, which is the firm, they start out in the middle of the water at 0. And if you're in a base flood elevation of 11, it doesn't mean that you're 11 feet in the air, because you have to take the ground into account. So if the ground is at 3 feet, like just round numbers, 3 feet, he's up 4 feet off the ground, he's at 7, so then he would have to end up elevating 5 feet. So you start out at 0 in the ocean, you take the ground into account, and you go up that far from the ground. So if he's at 3 and needs to get to 12, that's 9. Yeah, 9 feet off the ground.
So it's potentially doable for this trailer.
And that's why I'm gonna look at the elevation certificate to determine exactly what the exact numbers are, and then he'll have to make the determination if that's what they wanna move forward with.
So, and again, so I'm clear, one option for compliance here would be to raise that trailer up potentially to the base flood elevation of 12.
Well, it's the finished floor elevation, base flood's determined by FEMA, and then 1 foot above that is what the finished floor is at, yeah.
Finished floor, okay.
Yeah, finished floor, base flood is on the flood map, and finished floor is the requirement elevation, the required elevation.
All right. Did you have any further questions, Pastor Kritzinger?
No, sir.
All right. All right, does the town have anything else on this one?
Your Honor, I think we've had some really good dialogue to possibly bring this into compliance. We would modify our request to you then. We would suggest that, yes, that there is a violation. I think there was an admission to that effect. However, on the compliance date, perhaps if Your Honor gave a little bit longer period, town staff could meet with the property owner, and maybe we could bring this thing into compliance during that compliance period that you establish. I think we would not be scheduling a magistrate hearing in July. So your next hearing would be in August. So I
All
would
right.
just add that to the record.
Why don't we, anything else, Pastor?
I mean, looking at that timeline, I agree with her, July would be tough anyway. And if we are talking about being able to meet, talk about the floodplain, getting a permit to raise it, because I'm assuming that's gonna take permit. I would ask that you would move us to your September meeting, is all.
So to clarify, Your Honor, the September meeting, as far as a compliance date, the town would be looking for you to render a decision in this case, simply for the fact that we can keep the code enforcement matter moving forward. We would then have documentation to provide to FEMA, when they come and they do their inspections.
Why don't I could set a compliance date sometime in August with a review in September to decide whether to start fines or not start fines based on what's happened. I mean, again, if the respondent is moving towards compliance and, you know, an option has been chosen and things are happening, you know, I'd rather defer or suspend fines, you know, if you're making progress towards compliance, you know, if you're being obstinate, which I don't anticipate, then that's a different matter. But I'd like to schedule a compliance date so that things move forward.
Sure.
But I still retain authority to decide whether to pull the trigger on the fines or not, depending on what's happened.
Understood.
The town is agreeable to that, Your Honor.
All right, and what's the September, I can look it up, I just about write it down. Do you know what the September hearing date is?
I'll get that to you.
Maybe to the clerks. They tell us where to go, what to do.
September 2nd.
September 2nd.
All right, so what I'm going to do is I'll receive the town's exhibits and evidence, and I'll make a finding of violation. I'm going to set a compliance date that'll be somewhere out near the end of August. I'll have to look at the calendar. And then we'll schedule this for a status review on September the 2nd to hear what the current circumstances are and decide at that time whether those fines are going to be suspended or whether they're going to start to run there as of that compliance date. And again, just to be clear, if the respondent is moving forward and towards compliance and with diligence and in good faith, then you know, in all likelihood, I'll suspend the fine and we'll continue the matter and see how things progress. We want compliance not to hit you with a big fine, but that way things will keep moving forward. You'll have essentially you know, a carrot and a stick, as it were, to keep moving forward. And hopefully, from what I've heard, there might be a way to keep your trailer, if you know, if it's feasible to raise it up to a point that gets you to the base flood elevation of 12 feet. So, anything further on this one from the town?
No, Your Honor.
Pastor, anything else?
No, sir, thank you very much.
Do you have any questions?
No. I
Okay.
look forward to working
Very
with you.
good. Well, thanks for coming in then. You're free to go and good luck.
Thank you.
We can go ahead and move on to the next case.
Thank you, Your Honor. Our next case is 5790 Estero Boulevard. This is Fort Myers Beach case number 2024-1096. The property owner is Tonino DeMilo Trust and Lynn Jackson DeMilo Trust. The property address is 5790 Estero Boulevard. The violation is for a non-compliant structure. Your Honor, I'm going to go a little bit out of order here simply because we do not have the property owner present today. I would ask Officer Yazo if he can provide testimony to you as far as our noticing. And ultimately, I'm going to request that we continue this case to see if we cannot have better contact with the property owner. So, Officer Yazo?
Good morning again, Your Honor. Thomas Yazzo. I am the Emergency Services Director for Fort Myers Beach. And as a Director of the Compliance and Emergency Service Department, I'm responsible for day-to-day operations, Town of Fort Myers Beach. I'm going to jump right into the noticing since we are looking to move this forward and continue this. I prepared a notice of violation and searched the Lee County Property Appraisal Database containing property, the owner information, and further verified the property owner is Tonino and Lynn DeMilo, based on a deed found in official records of Lee County, Florida. I issued the notice violation on November 13th and sent a copy of it via certified mail. Sorry, Your Honor. Throwing stuff around. Excuse me one second. to the following addresses for the respondent. The first was a certified and regular mail to Tonino and DeMillo Trust and Lynn Jackson DeMillo Trust to 30 Stonegate Street, Stouffville, Ontario, L4A2C1, Canada. It was also sent to the address at 5790 Estero Boulevard and posted a copy of the notice of violation at the subject property. And at the town hall at 2731 Oak Street, Fort Myers, a copy of the notice of violation after the notice of posting and of evidence of ownership is labeled in Exhibit A. Notice of violation and information about the case is also displayed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the Town of Fort Myers Beach website. In that regard, we are going to ask for the continuance for a violation for this case, so we can repurpose and renotice in another manner, so we can make sure that we've done all due process, Your Honor.
All right.
Officer Yazzo, may I ask you a question? Was there any attempt made to try to reach the property owners by telephone?
Yes, there was. We did attempt to contact via phone. We've had no luck with that. We've left messages at any phone numbers that we could come up with, and that's been documented in the case.
So, Your Honor, our request is to continue this case to the next hearing, which would be I'm looking at the clerks. What date?
August the 5th.
August the 5th.
August 5th.
At which time we will continue our efforts to try to contact the property owners and perhaps even avail ourselves of additional noticing provisions in the statute to make sure that we get the case properly noticed.
Yeah, it looks like it's been noticed, but it certainly doesn't hurt to, make additional efforts so that you don't have any procedural issues, notice issues down the road. Is this just looking at the pictures? Now, this isn't a trailer. It looks like this is a half-finished building or something. Is that what?
Your Honor,
What
this
is
is this is actually a shipping container, a mini shipping container on property of a construction site.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And
see now,
it's
yeah.
been there for months. We've notified the construction company and attempted to notify the owners of said property. There's been no forward motion. That's why it was brought to hearing. We did find when we didn't get any information back on our return receipt. That's why we're asking for this continuance to act in good faith and with all due process.
All right. Well, I will. We'll go ahead then and continue this case to the August 5, 2025 agenda.
Okay, Your Honor, the next case, I'm gonna actually defer to Officer Yazzo on this one, simply because at the end of the presentation, you're gonna hear that, the property owner has come into compliance. In the record, we do have Exhibit B, which are all of the FEMA documentation, as you are aware of, and from our other cases. And so I don't really have too much more to say as part of an introduction. So again, I'm just gonna go ahead and defer to Officer Yazzo, to present the case.
Very good.
Your Honor, good morning again. Thomas Yazzo, Fort Myers Beach Emergency Services Director. So this case is for the property located at 6500-6502 Estero Boulevard. It is privateer of Fort Myers Beach. It is a condominium complex. They did have a non-compliant structure on property before the date of this hearing. They have removed it, so an affidavit of compliance was filled out, sir, on 5/29/2025. I have photos and the affidavit of compliance, which will be, if not sent to you already, will be sent to you via email, so you have that in file. I'd like to present that into evidence at this time. Your Honor, we're not looking for any fines in any manner other than the $250 court costs with this, and just a here in order stating that there was a violation in place before they came into compliance.
All right. Very good. I'll receive the town's exhibits and evidence, including the affidavit of compliance, and we'll go ahead and enter an order then that establishes the existence of the violation that has been corrected. without imposing fines and assessing $250 in administrative costs for the prosecution of the case. Is there anything else the town needs on this one?
No, Your Honor.
All right, very good. I guess that's all the violation cases. We've got a certificate of lien.
We do, Your Honor. That is your next case. This one, again, I note that the property owner is not present, and in an abundance of caution, and because of due process concerns further down the line, we will be asking that you issue a continuance of this case. We believe that it has been properly noticed. However, Mr. Hemmelstein Associates, they do have counsel that represents them, and we will provide a courtesy notice to their attorney who wanted to be kept aware of any matters moving forward involving his client.
All right. And do they remain out of compliance?
They are in compliance now, so
In
it's
compliance,
just,
okay.
it would just be the assessment of a lien for the period of time subsequent to your compliance date that they failed to remedy the situation.
Right. Okay. So you want to continue this one as well to August 5th?
Yes, sir.
All right. So I will do that. We'll continue continue this case to August 5.
So we don't have any more cases on your agenda today, Your Honor. Just for your information, we will be doing some training over July with our code officers. So hopefully when you come back in August, we'll even be better at what we're already doing. We have some new staff, so we want to orientate them to the process of how it occurs here in Fort Myers Beach.
Very good. Well, we're moving pretty efficiently, I have to say. The presentations have been pretty crisp. So if you improve them, we'll be even more efficient, I guess. Just we're already doing a pretty good job. All right. There's nothing else to hear today on today's agenda.
No, Your Honor.
Nothing else. All right. I will get orders out to you on these cases, two of which have been continued. One of which is a costs only after compliance, and of course the first one involving the church will be a finding of violation with a compliance date and a status report in September. So having nothing else on today's agenda, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, and I'll see you all next time.